Welcome to another episode of the Dose of Leadership podcast, the show that brings you inspiring and educational interviews with today's most relevant and motivating leaders. Each episode is dedicated to highlight real-life leadership and influence experts who dedicate their lives to the pursuit of the truth, common sense, and courageous leadership. And now, here's your host, Richard Rierson.
Hey, welcome to Dose of Leadership. Thank you for tuning in. This is Richard Rierson, another Equity Bank sponsored show today with a great guest, Kevin Kunz. He's the president and CEO of Sleeptopia Incorporated. They're one of the leaders in home sleep testing. I was surprised to find that we even had a home sleep testing, a private business here in town. Didn't know much about it, which is what made this conversation so fun and engaging and exciting. I think you'll find it that way too, because Kevin's great. He's very passionate. He's very passionate about entrepreneurship, passionate about healthcare, passionate about educating the public. That's what he did, because in 2013 he realized there was a need for a better, affordable solution for sleep testing. And that's what always fascinates me about entrepreneurs, right? They find this niche. Everybody comes up with this, I'm going to come up with a business idea, and they come up with a website, a plan, a product, right? And really the secret sauce is finding a need and solving the need. It's as simple as that. But it's having the ability and the opportunity to keep your eyes open for those opportunities and seeing those opportunities and taking advantage of it. And that's what Kevin did. He has spent most of his professional career in healthcare, and he loves being in a role where he can help people live better, healthier, more fulfilled lives. Again, I love that aspect of him, particularly when you're thinking about leadership, where we've talked about on the show. It is about influence. It's about adding value. And that's where Kevin came from the start, from starting this business. It's about adding value. He believes that it's all about education, awareness. He's real passionate about educating people on sleep apnea, something that I've come to find as I've turned 51 is a lot more prevalent and widespread than we like to believe. I think I'm suffering from this, and I'm going to check this out myself. He's considered an expert in the field of home sleep testing and obstructive sleep apnea. Again, I think you're really going to appreciate his passion. He's passionate, he's excited, his philosophy all around healthcare, entrepreneurship, and leadership. It's a great conversation here on Dose of Leadership. Kevin, so great to have you on the show. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You know, it's always funny. No one knows how much we talk before I start this recording, but you were probably one of the longest conversations I was having before I started recording. We're having such a great, fun conversation. I need to start recording it so we can start capturing some of this gold. This is going to be a fun one. So excited you're here. I don't know much about sleep studies. Is it at the right word, or sleep labs or anything like that?
Yeah.
But sleep is important to me as an international pilot. I sleep in fits and bursts, when I go international. I never get fully asleep, and then I recover. So I'm well versed in sleep. I know how important it is. How did you get started down this path? Why is sleep so important to you and passionate for you?
Well, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur, like many, a lot of people don't know how to get into it, obviously. I had a great mentor down in Dallas, and he kind of taught me, you see a niche, you go after it, get in the industry, and which I did, and started as in a company, started as a driver, worked my way up, got into sales, and then started my own business in that regards. But in the meantime, the reason why I got into sleep was I kept hearing about DOT, and such like you mentioned, you're a pilot.
Yeah.
And so I know I enjoyed talking to you prior to this too. But the pilots and DOT and everybody was starting to really kind of push sleep testing. You're starting to see a lot more accidents and things like that. What happened was just kind of it's amazing in business how one little thing happens and you end up going down a different path. I actually wanted to be a lawyer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and kind of fell into this, but and then be a lawyer and then get into entrepreneurship. But what happened was my mom and my brother actually went in for sleep studies, obviously at different times, and they didn't sleep. And so then they got about a $2,000 bill, and they had to go into a sleep lab. And anyhow, I kept hearing, again, my mentors, in the back of my head, if you see a niche, go after it, see a niche, go after it. And to which I started hearing more and more about home sleep testing. And at the time, nobody was doing it in Wichita, and I went, wait a second, kind of the bulb went off, and I started on $5,000, and there you go.
So what do we do with that? That's interesting, because nobody's doing it here in Wichita. You find this need. And so normally people go into an external lab, and so what you're offering is that you do it in the person's home?
Correct, yeah.
Awesome.
Yep,
Okay.
a third of the cost, actually. So,
well, that makes perfect sense. I wonder why no one even thought about that before, because obviously it's going to be difficult to sleep it's always difficult for me the first night to sleep
right.
in a foreign place.
Correct, yeah. Absolutely. You know, I think it more along fell on the lines of, historically speaking, what the process was when the primary doctor, the patient would go in and talk to the doctor and say, hey, I had these problems. Well, our mindset was, well, if a patient actually is coming in and talking to their doctor, it's a problem. Most people don't go in there just to say hi and
Right.
chat. So they went in there, and then what would happen was, the primary doctor would send it to a sleep doctor, in essence. Then the sleep doctor would say, okay, and then do the process of going into a sleep lab and seeing them 5 or 6 times. And so that process, I think, ultimately, why didn't anybody think about it? I think it's because that was always how it was.
Yeah, this is why we've always done it.
Yeah.
And then probably, too, with technology at the time, more bulky, more expensive, not as portable, we need monitors and lab equipment and stuff like that, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been amazing to see. I go to the sleep conventions. They're all throughout the United States once a year, and it's been amazing to see the change. I mean, now it's about the size of a cell phone that goes on your chest, and it's just amazing to
That
see.
is amazing.
And to see all of the change, and then also seeing the industry itself embrace it. You know, when we started, we were in a little small office with no bathroom or central and heat, and like I said, I started on $5,000 and a prayer, really.
Right.
And but those devices were a little bit bigger, and I've just been seeing them get smaller, and easier for the patient. So
someday it truly is going to be like Star Trek, where we just scan the body.
Oh no, you're absolutely right. We joke about that, and so the fact that it's insurance dictated. I know when Blue Cross came down, we were the first in network with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas, and they kind of looked at it and they're like, well, let's try it out, and so now next year they're about to make it to where that's the first option. And so it's been a beautiful thing to see that change, but we were kind of a part of that, and to see just kind of the evolution of sleep medicine here in Wichita. And, previous to, we were talking about people we look up to and things like that. That's when I was younger, it was athletes. Now I'm looking up to entrepreneurs and things that they've accomplished and trying to read what they saw, and that's kind of,
it's interesting because I love it when you're right. It's always about, the riches are in the niches type thing, right?
Right,
you're finding it. And I've always struggled with this show, because leadership is such a broad umbrella, and over the years, and even in 7 years doing this show, I've found and narrowed it down, but it's not as tight as I'd like it to be. So how did you, I guess it was just because of the experience with your mom and your brother, right?
Right, yeah.
But so take me back to that. Was it like lightning in a bottle, or was it a slow, yes, and trying to convince yourself, and was the limiting belief in that voice telling you, nah, that's crazy. It's almost too good to be true. You know what I mean? It's like,
right. No, it's a perfect story. Like, my dad actually was a truck driver, and he brought that, and I was, I had that in the back of my head, and then it was more anger.
Oh, was it?
It was like, what in the world? Because they didn't get a diagnosis out of it, because they didn't sleep. And so I was like, wait a second here. There's a better
way to do it.
So that's just, it was more kind of, my brother and I are very protective of our mom, in a way. So it was kind of like, hey, wait a second.
So did you find it? So you had this frustrating kind of life event, and you said, okay, I'm going to start investigating this. Did you find examples that you could emulate, or were you kind of charting a path?
Here locally, we were definitely charting. Obviously, we didn't invent, the home sleep testing. It was offered in the East or West Coast, and it kind of had some traction, but it with all things, change is scary, obviously. But, it also went from a couple $1,000s for a sleep study to a fraction of that.
Yeah.
So, you have to factor in there was money involved with that, but we're a firm believer in, doing the right thing and creating that awareness and saving patients money. And in essence, that's what it was. And we figured if we did that, then we would make up for that. Now, we may have to do 5 to 7 studies to equal that, but we just tested 5 to 7 extra people, which we're going to help their lives live longer and things like that. So your initial question was, what started you down that path? Well, initially it was kind of frustrated, and I was like, wait, and then it just kind of, wait a second, I can help people by doing this, and it was just exciting,
How did you validate that there was a market for it? I'm sitting there thinking is like, because I could see myself getting excited about it and then getting deflated thinking, well, is there really a market for it?
Oh, my gosh. I get it. It's funny. I still, it's been 7 years. I'm still excited about talking about sleep. So I always joke, I never thought I'd lose sleep thinking about sleep, but there's such a big market for it. It's sad, but it's also good that we're able to not. I always tell people we're basically a tool in the doctor's belt. That's all we are. We get to help the doctor. So it's awesome to be able to do that, But what we're seeing is more kids, now teenagers needing to get tested. And so with everything in medicine, the awareness is created within the population as well. Now they're saying, wait a second, I may have this problem, So to answer your question, there's, depending on what study you look at, 1 out of 7 may have sleep apnea, 1 out of 3. I mean, it's just depending, and especially it depends on where you're at as well, too. Different states have different variations. But like last month alone, we had about 300 orders come in for people to get tested coming in. So you're seeing more and more. But you're also seeing that, going back to the farmers like we were talking about earlier, being from a small community, there was no way you were getting that farmer in to test out of the field. He was only doing it to appease his wife or anything like that. So now they have no excuse. So maybe you're seeing more and more people get tested because, well, I can do it at home, or I'll do it so my wife won't kill me, or I mean, type of deal.
Well, there's definitely an awareness of it. I mean, I think back to when I was a kid, and every relative I had, including my father over 50, snored all the time.
Yeah.
Right? And I've noticed as I turned 50 last year. I mean, I'm constantly getting, been married 26 years, and the last 5 years, my wife's waking me up because I'm snoring.
Right.
And then I notice that I catch myself waking myself up. If I'm sleeping in a crew rest waiting to get home and I'm in a lounge chair, I'm constantly waking up because I'm choking on my tongue or whatever.
Yeah,
right?
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
And so, but there's definitely an awareness, obviously. What do you think? I mean, obviously that has been to your benefit, but I guess going back to those customers, are they getting triggered? Are they finding you through their doctor, or are they finding you like a guy like me is like, man, I see my buddy's wearing a sleep apnea mask. And
right.
It's helping
CPAP. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess my question is are you getting the referrals from the doctors, or are you finding people off the street contacting you directly?
Well, it's always important to keep the doctor in it. And so what we do is we have our patients go see their primary doctor, and they talk to their primary and just tell them, hey, just like what you just said. I mean, our tagline, our trademark is "Don't ignore the snore," right?
Right.
And so, what we're seeing is our patients will go in, and now it seems like anytime you talk about sleep, you're like, oh yeah, I have a friend or a family member or what have you, right? Everybody knows somebody that's on a CPAP, and they're usually our best marketers because of how they feel afterwards after being on it, right? But our doctors send to us, and we go talk to the doctors, and we tell them, hey, these are the things that are, like you just mentioned, that's a great example. But one of the biggest changes in our industry is the perception of sleep apnea. What does the person that has sleep apnea, what does he look like?
Yeah.
Or what does she look like?
Right.
You'd be amazed. We test about 50-50 male-female. I mean, it's an amazing thing. But sleep apnea is not, some people, there are instances, yes, it's weight related, right? But sometimes it's just genetics.
Yeah.
I wore a CPAP, and my grandfather was an amazing person. He passed away at 53 and he had a massive heart attack.
Really?
And you're seeing more and more people die of sleep apnea. And so that's helping. That's unfortunate, but
why is and it's kind of turning like into a medical show almost, but why all of a sudden in the last 5 years would I start, I guess, as I age?
Well, you have to factor in your sleep hygiene as well. That's one of the things. You're saying you're a pilot. Especially we do companies as well, and sleep hygiene is the biggest thing. And
what does that mean, sleep hygiene?
So sleep hygiene is going to be like, well, first thing what we would do is when doctor would send over is we would ask, what's your sleep hygiene, right? And sleep hygiene is, are you going to bed reading your phone? Are you watching TV before you go to bed? Do you have a consistent bedtime? We're creatures of habit,
right?
So a lot of people think they can just make up the sleep on the weekend, which is it's a myth. You can't. So you need to look at your sleep hygiene, and that could be your number one thing, right?
Yeah.
The second thing is going to your doctor, and to get that study. That can determine. It's just like anything else. You ask why did it happen in the last 5 years? Well, maybe just something that's just started to you've noticed more in the last 5 years, right?
Right.
So it's sometimes symptoms like high blood pressure. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing. You got to think about it. Why did I all of a sudden have to get on blood pressure meds?
Right. Yeah.
Our bodies are great. They're amazing.
And they're constantly changing. And
correct.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the mindset and the leadership aspect of it. You talked about in the beginning. It's funny that you said you wanted to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
Some of I can't tell you how many clients I've met of men. Who said, "Yeah, I wanted to be a lawyer," and I'm like, and now they're 45 or whatever, and they want to find a change, and they hated it, right?
Right.
But they wanted to become a lawyer because they thought that was the path to more money, prestige, expectations, everything else. Why did you want to become a lawyer?
I wanted to be a lawyer because I wanted to help people. Mm-hmm. I wanted to help, people that couldn't afford or do more pro bono and I've always,
You wanted to serve, basically.
Yeah, I wanted to help people,
yeah.
and then God had a different path for me, and this kind of helped open it, which is great because now I really get to help people,
right?
And so it's exciting.
And so do you have this mindset of serving? Do you see yourself have you always seen yourself as a leader, as an entrepreneur? I almost use those words interchangeably because I think great entrepreneurs at some point have to understand what leadership means.
Right.
Right. Did you always see yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you see yourself as a leader? Did you see somebody that wanted to take control of their life?
I think to answer your question, going out of high school, I didn't really know what to do.
Were you a confident kid?
I think every senior is confident to a certain degree, right?
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know. Yeah. So you're arrogant to the point that ignorance is bliss, right?
Exactly. What is that saying? Ask a senior before they forget everything because they know everything as a senior, right? I don't think I knew what an entrepreneur really was then at that time. We were talking about I grew up in a small community and the resource. That's why we were talking about DECA here in Wichita and things like that. We didn't have those, so I love that they do now because had I known, then probably, I would have known how to put a word on what I really wanted to be, but to answer that question, no, I didn't really know.
So the dream was what, though? I guess that's what I really want to know. It's like, what was the dream when you were sitting there as you were entering college, as you were graduating? What did you foresee your life being?
I think every kid, I played basketball in college, and I think my dream was to, as I look back and being naive and as wanting to be an NBA player,
Sure.
I've always been extremely competitive, and that's probably credit to my big brother, and always, he was a great example, an amazing big brother, but we always played games and stuff like that, but I don't know if I ever looked past,
I get you.
Past it, other than just living in the moment, really.
Yeah. And when you're that old, too, and it's 40, 50 seems so far away.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, you're living in the moment. I get that, yeah.
Yeah.
But as you started, any entrepreneur ventures before Sleeptopia?
Really, I did. I was a kid. I had a lawn care business. Then it got to be pretty large, and then me and a friend took one on together, and did that. And that was looking back. My mom is just an amazing person, and she had us start working when we were 13 in the summer. For farmers and whatnot. I went, I don't want to drive a tractor. I would rather drive a lawnmower,
Right.
So yeah, I did do that, and then I, kind of put my toes in it here and there throughout, but didn't know how to correctly do it, Didn't have a good, at the time I didn't really have a good example.
So when you started this business, did you feel like you were ready? Or
Absolutely.
Absolutely. You felt like
Absolutely.
you were ready?
Well, I think any entrepreneur will probably tell you this. You think you're ready.
Right. And then, you get in. And okay, so what were some of those things that you dove in, I'm ready, you've stepped past the fear and uncertainty piece, and you're ready to jump off the cliff and see where the parachute opens. What were some of the unexpected setbacks that you didn't foresee?
Everything. I went to Wichita State later in my life, and I will tell you, fantastic business program out there, and I took a lot of those classes and I loved it. However, there's that old school of Back to School with Rodney Dangerfield. You know that old movie, right?
Yeah.
And he's in that business class. He goes, well, this is how it is, and this is how it is. And I prepared and I put a business plan together, and I thought I had it. It was all those unknown variables.
Yeah.
Okay, so when we launched Sleeptopia, half the insurances were like, we don't know. The other half was like, let's try it. It was experimental. They thought home sleep testing, even though sleep testing has been around for years and years and years, home sleep studies started in the early 2000s, but they still were like, no. So we had to fight that change, right? And so there was that. And then reimbursements. That was an issue. And, so I had to circle myself around, some really great people that kind of taught me, okay, this is how you need to do this, or this is how you need to do this. And you think you're going to go out there just by yourself, and it really does take a team.
Hey, we're about halfway through the conversation, but I wanted to take the time to talk about my good friends, the sponsor here of this special series at Equity Bank. Have you ever noticed that most business bankers seem to really understand just one thing? It's banking, right? And not a lot about business. It makes sense since most banks were built generations ago and now they're often run by caretakers, not business builders. Well, it's not the case here at Equity Bank. The bankers at Equity Bank didn't inherit a bank generations ago. They built one of their own. They know that building something takes expertise, vision, and hard work. And over the past decade, they've built one of the region's fastest growing banks by working side by side with customers, with entrepreneurs, with leaders in communities, all throughout Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and Oklahoma. Recently, Equity Bank was listed on the NASDAQ exchange, which gives them even greater capabilities to take on those big deals that growing businesses need to keep on growing. So if you're tired of talking to bankers who've never really ran or owned or built a business, then I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised when you talk to my friends at Equity Bank. Thanks for listening to this show. Let's get back to the conversation, this unique and special series on leadership and entrepreneurship brought to you by my friends at Equity Bank.
I think we have these images when we start a business and we're entrepreneurs, like, oh, I'll do everything. And you can't do this alone. Right?
No.
And when you are faced with those inevitable unforeseens, they're going to crop up no matter how detailed your plan is.
Yeah.
When you find those people, right, you got to surround it. It's been done before. Even though the problem may be new, the challenge has been faced before. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no. People that know me well, know how much high regard I have for my wife, and she is probably the most amazing person that you could ever meet. I always tell people that everybody loves my wife. I think sometimes they only tolerate me, right?
Right.
And but she was like my biggest. Those moments where you just want to throw in the towel.
Yeah.
You've really got to have that. I have good friends. Especially one of my friends in Dallas, and I had a great mentor, and just my friends. Cheering me on. My family, of course, was there. Even those moments of when you're praying that you're going to make that payroll, or things like that, they still stay in your corner and they tell you how you can do this. I believe in you. And sometimes when you lose that faith in the first couple of years, for sure, you need that.
Well, and I think it's important to understand that every entrepreneur that I've ever talked to, that I've ever met, every single one of them has gone through those moments, and every single one of them has said they didn't get through. It was a great entrepreneur I met here, a mentor, and he calls them in the mud moments, right?
Yeah,
where you're
that's
in
a
the
good way.
mud.
I like that.
And to get out of the mud, you can't get out by yourself.
Mm-mm.
You always are surrounded by someone else, and that's the great thing for people. I think for people to understand is particularly with how am I going to make payroll? There's 1,000 entrepreneurs in this city who could tell you their story about how that night they didn't know how they were going to make next week's payroll.
Yeah.
Right? And so you surround yourself with that. Okay, I can make it through this dark night, right?
Right. My dad, I love my dad's his sense of life and how he kind of views things. And he always said, son, he goes, if you worry yourself sick, are you going to pay that bill the next day? Are you going to make it? If you just worry all night long. Mm-hmm. And I was like, he goes, no, you're not. And he goes, so don't worry about it. Just put a plan in place, go at it,
Yeah.
And funny in those moments in the mud, like you put, I like that. That voice in the back of your head, you're just like, all right, I need to focus on this. Let's take our attention away from it. And it seems like when you step away, that's when you kind of come up with a solution, right? And so it's you go back. I like that.
It's funny how, and you get, it doesn't have to be as drastic as not making payroll either. I look at it like every single day from a personal growth aspect. It's the same, right? It's like you're constantly. Sometimes that mud is just a little puddle. Sometimes it's a pig trough that you're completely drowning in, right? Yeah. But either way, it's always a constant battle. The way I look at it, it's always a constant battle of trying to be, and what your father just said is being present in the moment, right?
Absolutely.
Because when you're sitting there thinking about the what ifs,
mm-hmm.
you're living in the future, something that doesn't even exist yet.
Yeah.
And if you're lamenting on the mistake that you made that got you to this point where you didn't, maybe you made a bad decision and you betting on this cash flow that didn't come.
We all make those.
And so you're thinking how stupid you were I should have listened to my wife. She's always right, right? But here you are. All you have is the present moment, right? And that's what your father's telling you.
Yeah.
And that, that's with everything. That is, you look at all the spiritual teachers and gurus, they tell you that all you have is right now, this moment. So what are you going to do? And you either got to get through it, you got to accept it. It is what it is. Right? You may not like it, but you have to accept it.
Well, we were talking earlier, I got 5 kids, and when you get to those moments, when you come home and they're like, Dad, and they're so excited, and that's the one thing I've learned about being a dad and being in the moment. And that's what I've been trying to really, over the last, really 10 years, is just live in it. Don't leave this at the office. Come home, be present.
Be present all the time.
Yeah.
Right.
And enjoy it because, and to them, they look up to me and how I'm handling things and things to that nature. And so I started this thing where I spend an hour a week one-on-one with each one of my kids and just trying to balance that life and what they love it and they look forward to it.
Yeah.
But it gets me away from business, which has been a great thing. So
I wouldn't even say it's a balance thing. I like to think it's a priority thing, right? Everything, because there's going to be a time when the business has a priority, right? Or this moment has a priority. And so, but being present in the moment and weighing what's the priority right now, it's constant, right? It never stops.
No.
And I think what you're getting at too, and I think it's very important to highlight here, is, and we talk about it constantly on this show, but it goes to the importance of it, is the intentionality behind it. I'm always talking about, hey, if you're going to do something, you got to be intentional about it. I'm always telling my kids, I'm telling my clients, everything else, you got to be intentional. Yeah. And they're like, oh, yeah. What does that mean? Well, it means a lot of work, right? Because I don't know about you, but I got up here, it's like, a double-fisted drunk monkey I'm trying to focus on something, and he's always feeding my head with a bunch of other noise, right? And so it's trying to silence that double-fisted drunk monkey.
Being there, being present.
Being present, because that drunk monkey is going to try to, hey, what's, our friend Mike has got the license plate squirrel, right? Squirrel, right? It's like,
you gotta love Mike, yeah.
It's like that dog in that movie Up, right? Squirrel, right?
Yep.
And I think that's everybody's mind is so busy that way. And
right.
So how do you get present? What are your personal habits? It's interesting. I mean, how intentional are you improvement and reflection. I mean, you already talked about how you're trying to be intentional with your kids and the moment and everything else. But what about personal habits? Do you do anything?
I should probably exercise more, but
we all should, right?
But just every day, I go to work, I get up early, obviously, and I go through my emails, and I just try to keep a steady, consistent pattern, right? And so I get up in the morning, go through emails, and then about 8 o'clock, my phone just starts.
Pinging.
Yeah. And so I try to get those and knocked out, and then I go into the office and I'll obviously do any of those things. And right now we've been hiring and going through that but that's really, and then it seems like with 5 kids, you're constantly going.
There's always something.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. And, but I told my wife the other day, so we're living in the best years of our life right now.
I know. You got to remind yourself of that, right?
Yeah.
Someday you're, wow, okay, this isn't going to be here. Right?
Yeah. Absolutely, and then a poor lady's going to be stuck with me one-on-one.
So I'm approaching that point now, and the two of us are looking at each other like, okay, so maybe we'll take up hang gliding or something. Yeah. No, that's good though. I think you're right. And how old are your kids?
I've got 15, 14, 12. 12. You just turned 12, and then I got 9, and then a 2-year-old.
Yeah, so you get the whole gamut.
Yeah. And the youngest one, he is go 24/7.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty neat to see it all. But I don't know, parenting. That is probably ultimately, I love my business. I love that we've been able to do this and grow and give people jobs. I mean, that's been like I've been helping people, right? But it's just being a parent is probably the most important thing in my life, and I love that, and being a husband and making a change in them, and then now what the business has done for me is I always tell people, we were talking about that, is it changes your mindset of life. Mm-hmm. Realistically, you look at things a little bit differently. You get to see behind the curtains now, right?
Yeah.
And so you see things differently. Well, I've been able to teach those things to my kids.
Yeah.
To where they can. And now, like you were asking, like when I was a senior in high school and when I was going to college, I had no clue what I wanted to do. But my kids all want to be. One wants to be a neurologist. One wants to be a vet. One wants to be a surgeon. One wants to be a gamer. Jax, we don't know what he's going to do. But they do have. So, having that and having a mentor, and that is ultimately, man, just really what changed it all.
It sounds, again, I don't know what the perspective, but I look at some of these older school entrepreneurs that are in their twilight of their lives, in their 80s and their 90s, and some are still here, and I've talked to some of them, and you see some of these. I just watched this documentary on Netflix on Bill Gates in the last couple of days, and the level of intensity and how to be and lead a successful, significant life, you either got to be all in or not, and to the sacrifice of what we were talking about here. And I've never been a firm believer of it. I've seen it, like I was telling you before we started recording, and I've talked about it on this show, this splat moment where, I almost got divorced 12 years ago because I was so lopsided.
Right.
And I'm hearing you, and you're an entrepreneur, and the priorities seem to be, it's everything. It's all encompassing. And again, I don't call it a balance, work-life balance. I call it a prioritization because it's different, right? Sometimes the business and sometimes the family.
Right.
You talk to some of these old school guys and these people that have done it, and some have argued with me that you can't have both. And I don't know. I kind of disagree. It all depends how you define a significant life, though, right?
Right.
And to me, I think that's the key. And too often, I think superficially we define success. I think we're lopsided.
Right.
So I guess I would ask you, my long dissertation here, what does a significant life look like to you?
Well, let me touch base on it. I love, like my mentor down in Dallas, he took a company public, and he gave me some really amazing advice on about everything. I mean, it's just, he really kind of, I always tell people, he took me from running into the door to picking me up and get me to the door, right? And his mindset was like, I wasn't around for my kids as when they were younger, but I'm able to give them everything they have there, and they really resonated with me, right? Mm-hmm. Because I was like, that was a priority one, right? And I admire so many of the older, like Charles Koch, and I admire Jobs or Meyer, the big names, Bill Gates and so forth, and Jeff Bezos. A lot of these bigger names, you try to study and learn from them, and try to take, because if they were sitting in my shoes right now, would they like to have a bigger balance, on their personal life? You always kind of look, if they look back on their life, would they have done it differently, right? Yeah. So I have a huge, huge admiration for those guys, and for them, but I'm sorry.
I guess my point is that, yeah, I do too. I mean, and you look at them, and I guess I used to think it's an either or.
Right.
And I don't know if that's the right way to look at it. I think it's having the awareness, the self-awareness of who you are, what your priorities are, what you want to accomplish, and what significance looks like, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I think a lot of times, you look at Jobs and you look at the first half of his life, and then you look at it when he was facing death with pancreatic cancer. Right. He was a completely, and he even said it. And he goes, man, I wish I woulda.
Right, yeah.
He died with a lot of love around him, but he died with a lot of, man, I wish I wasn't that way.
Right.
I wish I'd known it. And then, I've talked to some, successful entrepreneurs here, even in this town. They said, the regrets are, I wasn't there for my kids. I wasn't there for my family.
Right.
I wasn't with. And I guess the question is, and I don't know what the answer is, can you have it? Can you be the successful entrepreneur, and can you have the
well,
you know what I mean?
I think ultimately, you always go back to entrepreneurship. I never had enough time. And then you hear the other side of it going, well, that's because you're not organized, right? So you should have enough time. I love where we're at as a size of business. I don't know if, again, you have to go back to circling yourself around people. I think you could potentially do that balancing act if you had solid people around you.
Exactly.
Right? And learning to let go a little bit. Not, entrepreneurs, I think we all kind of don't. That's probably the biggest and hardest thing that we have to do.
Well, yeah, and I know, I take a look at this client I had that is an entrepreneur, brought it up from a college dorm to where it is now.
Wow.
And, he's 55, 56 in that range, and that's been his big struggle is like, how do you let go?
Yeah.
And that's the transition that people have to make at some point, yeah. But I think that's what's critical, that I think if what got you this point was success, keep playing in that lane,
right?
And don't necessarily change and try to still be you, but surround yourself with people who can help you scale.
Right. That's joining, getting such as a leader, CEO leader, such as like you, or there's others in town, and I'm part of a group called Vistage, and having stuff like that does help because. Mm-hmm. I don't know how many times in the last, especially 5 years. So one of the things about Sleeptopia is we're a debt-free company, and I started on $5,000. I've gotten one loan for $12,000. That was it. And my mentor always told me, "Des bad, right?" And but going with that is having strong people around you so you can balance and. Having that capital, right, and doing things, because then you could get to that point quicker and enjoy things like. So it's just a balancing act, but having strong people behind you to kind of guide you is definitely the most important.
Yeah, I think it's very critical. I think and even I was watching that Bill Gates documentary. He said that. He said, "I've always been blessed to be around and partnered with people who we had mutual interests." Who we augmented each other, where one was strong, the other was weak, and vice versa.
Yeah.
Right. And it's critical, right? And
right.
Who your friends are, even this day, is critical.
You definitely have to circle yourself around solid people. That's for sure. Yeah. And especially when those moments get
hairy, in the mud.
Yeah.
Well, what's next for you guys? What are you excited about for the future, and where's Sleeptopia going?
We are looking. So we expanded up in Kansas City. We've opened an office up there. We've got a lot of solid relationships here in Wichita. What's great is we had a lot of sleep doctors here in the past. I name like Dr. Blocks and Dr. Lake, and they were kind of the fathers of sleep, and they kind of created the awareness here. And so what's next for us is trying to build off what they built on. Built off of in the 80s, and 90s, and continue to create awareness for sleep apnea and the dangers of it, right? And that's the most important thing, because getting tested for sleep apnea is very serious. And a lot of people just laugh it off, don't ignore the snore, they just laugh or what have you. So the next is creating awareness to the consumer and saying, hey, this is a problem. It's, that can be fixed and help you live longer. Not only lower your blood pressure and give you more energy and things like that. So the next thing is just let's create more awareness for it. Let's create awareness that home studies are available. We're surprised at how many people don't realize home studies are available.
Yeah, I didn't know until prior to meeting you.
Yeah, and so creating that awareness for that, but also testing people and letting them know that, hey, this is a problem. So what's next is just to continue to grow and expand and try to help as many people as we possibly can. And again, a lot of people, I have to say this because a lot of people think if they do a sleep study, they're automatically getting a CPAP. That's not true. There's a lot of other options out there as well and things like that. The sleep study just tells you which way to get it. Our ultimate goal is to create more awareness so that you can live the best life that you can live. And that's what we're after.
How do people get in touch with you, learn more about Sleeptopia?
They can go on our website, sleeptopiainc.com. They can Google us on there. They can talk to their doctors about us. And if they do have problems, like we've mentioned, and just talk to them and tell them you'd like to give us a shot.
Great.
So
it's been fun having you on the show. I've learned a lot, and I love your mindset. And again, I love talking to entrepreneurs. I mean, there's a consistent theme. I definitely see someone that's got a humble, teachable spirit. I see somebody who's been tenacious. Those are aspects that we promote and value here on this show, and it's been really fun talking to you.
Hey, thanks for having me here. It's been great.
Hey, thanks for listening to this special entrepreneurial and leadership series, The Dose of Leadership, brought to you by my friends at Equity Bank. Make sure to subscribe to Dose of Leadership, where you can hear more great stories in this unique and special series. If you're enjoying this podcast, please take a listen to all of my Dose of Leadership podcasts, all of my episodes, and see why Fortune, Entrepreneur, and Inc. magazine all recommend this as a must-listen. Dose of Leadership features candid conversations with amazing guests, leading high-performing experts and organizations, large and small, all over the world. Find Dose of Leadership on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, and go ahead and visit doseofleadership.com, where you can find out more information about the show, myself, my speaking engagements, my keynotes, live seminars, and my mastermind events. Thanks for tuning in, and have a great day.